Hello. Good evening. This is going to be our first class or lecture in collective behavior and social movement. Our discussion today will focus on two issues. One, the meaning of collective behavior, and secondly, the characteristics of collective behavior. This course is divided into two broad parts: collective behavior, and then the second part is social movements. Our first coverage of the course will focus on collective behavior, and once we are through with that, we shall embark on social movements. This is an important area, especially for students of social sciences, sociology, community development, criminology, and even security studies. It is quite an important area. Not just important, but also exciting. I want to welcome you to this discussion, and I want to encourage you to note down any issue that is either not adequately explained or not clear, so that we can spare some time and look at it when we meet during our face-to-face lectures. I wish to make some observations before we look into the meaning of collective behavior. And I wish to observe that generally, people behave in a way that's expected of them, and that is in a patterned and predictable behavior. For instance, there is behavior expectation of people who are attending a church service or a religious function or a funeral or attending or watching cinema in a cinema hall, or waiting to pick up a public transport vehicle in a bus park, or students in class attending lectures or sitting for exams. There are always patterned and predictable ways in which they behave, and all of them are expected to behave according to those particular rules and regulations. But sometimes it is not possible for people to behave in such a manner as is expected of them. That is, sometimes people find themselves in situations that are unfamiliar, and therefore they are not sure of how well to behave, because the norms or regulations on how they need to behave are not clear. And in that case, people tend to develop new regulations, new rules, in order for them to behave and manage the situation that they find themselves in, which, according to them, is unfamiliar. The decision by people who find themselves in a situation that they're not used to come up with the new ways or regulations or behavior so that they're able to behave according to the demands of the situation that they find themselves. That is what generally we call collective behavior. In short, therefore, we can understand collective behavior as a spontaneous and temporary behavior that involves a large number of people engaging in activities that go against conventional norms. For instance, riots, when people make noise, they riot, they demonstrate. Sometimes they don't observe the rules that are available. Sometimes when people are in a stadium watching soccer, sometimes they disembark from the stands and attack the referee. In that case, they're behaving in a way that is unfamiliar. Again, when we are threatened or there is widespread fear, sometimes again we can behave in a way that we are not used to. So when we talk about collective behavior, it is simply a behavior that is shown by individuals who find themselves in a situation that they are not familiar with, and in which case they develop rules, however temporary they are, that guides their behaviors at that particular time. And these rules normally, they are those rules that go against the established rules. Some of the examples of behavior that amounts to collective behavior are crowds, mobs, riots, rumors. Others are fashions and fads, panics, hysteria, propaganda, and public opinion. We are going to discuss in our subsequent discussion each and every of these types of collective behavior in details. For instance, crowds is simply a temporary gathering of people. Mobs are simply an emotional and violent gathering of people that target specific individuals. Riots is a collection of people who erupt in a destructive manner, and the main purpose is simply to create a social disorder. Then a rumor is simply unconfirmed reports on an issue, an object, or a person. We are going to spare time and discuss each of these types of collective behaviors in detail. We are going to look at what they are, their characteristics, and how they develop and influence or present themselves in a normal in the society. So I want students to still not worry so much about what they are, because they'll form the crust of what we are going to discuss in this course. There are certain elements or features that are common to all collective behavior, especially the ones that have just mentioned. So we want to look at some of these. One of them is the aspect of spontaneity. Spontaneity simply means that something begins slowly and gathers momentum. That is, it erupts abruptly without planning, and it spreads and gathers momentum as it moves from one individual to the next. Therefore, unlike other social groups which have a definite origin, collectivities develop spontaneously. They often form around casual acquaintances without anyone's planning. For instance, people who are engaging in a riot, they may not have proper planning that they are going to engage in riot. And again, the individuals participating in that riot, they may not have detailed knowledge about each other. Sometimes their first meeting probably are in those gatherings that lead to riot. In the modern form, collective behavior, say supporters such as supporters of soccer team, for instance, come into being on the basis of common attraction to the soccer team, which is usually a spontaneous process. For instance, if you support a given soccer team, it is normally spontaneous. Rarely do people know that people have prior knowledge that so and so subscribes or supports a given soccer team. The formation is quite spontaneous. Even the team management might not know globally who supports them and who does not support them. And they may not have any control about who should support them or who should not support them. People have different reasons as to why they engage in supporting a given a team. And therefore, members of collective behavior coalesce in response to surrounding conditions and needs without commitment to any particular task or outcome. Just like a demonstration, people will join the demonstration, and once the issue is sorted out or they are violently dispersed by the authorities, people will retreat to their places of origin, and they can hardly again get time to be together on the same. So the fact that this becomes an important characteristic of collective behavior. That is, it begins slowly without planning, and it spreads as a lot more people get attracted to it. The other important characteristic of collective behavior is the fact that they have unclear norms. That is, rules and regulations guiding collective behavior are never clear. They are not properly defined, and there is no authority that has been put in place by participants in any collectivities to be in charge of such behavior. Therefore, lack of clarity of norms becomes an important characteristic of collective behavior. And indeed, it distinguishes it from other social groups. For instance, when people cheer a football game, the cheering is not considered collective behavior, because in the situation where the game is, cheering is considered normal behavior. Otherwise, you would cheer and jeer players based on their performance. If the performance pleases you, you cheer them. If the performance is unpleasant to you, you jeer them. However, if a large group from the audience in the stadium, for instance, decides to go down to the pitch and assault the referee for making a call which they consider is unfavorable to their side, then this becomes collective behavior, because such behavior is not part of the normative expectations of the game situation. In a game situation, you are required to watch the game, support your team, and go home. But in certain instances, riots, demonstrations normally erupt in the stadium, and the process, people engage in activities that they had no prior planning. Therefore, for any behavior to be defined sociologically as collective behavior, it has to be unconventional. That is, it goes against the rules, the norms that are known. It must be unexpected. That is, there was no prior planning. It must also be unusual, unique in itself, and again, relatively unstructured. Unstructured means it may not have proper structures, proper leadership, proper communication channels. That is what makes it collective behavior. So lack of proper guidance, norms, regulations, and rules and procedures is another important characteristic of collective behavior, and it distinguishes it from other groups that people normally know. The other characteristic of collective behavior is what we call multiplicity of goals. What we mean here is that even though from the outside, the impression of any collective behavior is that members of any given collectivity have common goals, the reality is that the goals are not common. That is, each and every member of any collective behavior may not have similar goals. The purposes, therefore, of collectivities tend to be mixed, and they correspond to the multiple needs of members. For instance, if there is a riot, students are rioting, perhaps because of unfair practices at the university. the goal of that tryout might not be the same. While to some students, their main goal is to protest against what they consider as unfair rules, others might want those riots to go on so that the university is closed down, and in the process, they can have a break to rest before they resume to continue their studies. For others, they might want to use the opportunity when demonstrations are going on to undertake other things, to visit relatives, to visit their friends, and to do others. Some might simply be broke, and therefore they perceive the riot as offering them opportunity to take a break and replenish themselves financially. Others might want to exploit the riots to engage in criminal activities, such as looting or physically harming other members of the public. That is why we are saying that the goal of any collective behavior is not always one. Unlike other organizations where the goals are similar and members have a common direction and a common goal that they seek to join groups to achieve. However, we may categorize the multiple goals that are found in collective behavior into two. We have what we call instrumental goals, and then we have what we call socio-emotional goals. Instrumental goals are the main goals for which any given collective behavior is happening. For instance, if the students riot and their riot is because of unfair practices, say they are rioting because of mistreatment of their colleague by public transport providers, that demonstration to register their discontent or their dissatisfaction with the way they're being managed or the way they're being handled by public transporters, that might be the instrumental goal. But there's also what we call the socio-emotional goals. These are goals that are designed to enable members satisfy their personal needs, and they are such needs as emotional support, encouragement, companionship, and affection. So if we pick any single collective behavior, the goals are diverse and might be as diverse as the number of members participating in any given collective behavior. But however diverse they are, we can broadly categorize them into two. That is instrumental as well as socio-emotional goals, just the same way I have explained them. The other aspect of collective behavior is that one to do with leadership. Unlike other groups where leadership is clear, the criteria of selecting leadership is clear. The rules governing the conduct of the leadership is clear. The responsibilities of the leadership is clear. The same is not with collective behaviors, because leaders of collective behaviors, they are selected through what we call subjective criteria, not objective criteria. So their qualification relates to the extent to which members of a collectivity perceive them as being close to them. It is not because they possess the ability and the qualities to discharge the responsibilities of that particular collective behavior. It is more of personal characteristics that are considered, and these ones are more of subjective, so that the extent to which the leaders can please the members or solve problems directly that is relevant to their lives makes them qualify as leaders. So there's an aspect of populism, the one who is able to rally members and speak to the authorities and confront the authorities. that is the one that members of collectivity will consider as their leaders. So they look at more leadership. It is more of the person who appeals to their heart and not the one that appeals to their intellect. Therefore, groups identify leaders for whom they have personal affection or loyalty, and this may change as conditions and preferences change. For instance, if they perceive a particular individual as being capable of leading a strike, and in the process they feel that the person perhaps is engaging in endless negotiation with management in a bid to resolve the issue, they then might perceive that particular person as being compromised, because for them the issue is lead us into demonstration, because it's a demonstration is perhaps the only language that they perceive authorities to listen to. So any person that is engaging in other structured engagement, they might perceive that as a sign of betrayal, and immediately they might replace that individual, because the individual is not appealing to their hearts, but is rather trying to convince them and trying to appeal to their intellect, which in this case is not where their interest lies. The other characteristic of collective behavior is that one of anonymity. Anonymity simply refers to a condition in which the identity of individuals are not known to the general public. In collective behavior, anonymity implies that members are attracted to each other haphazardly without any prior planning. Moreover, members may not know one another as such, since they remain virtually anonymous. Anonymity, in this case, encourages members of collective behavior to behave recklessly and sometimes irresponsibly. For instance, when there's a riot and people are rioting, some members of this particular riot group might simply harm members of the public, throw stones at vehicles, hurl insults, simply because the group gives them a camouflage. It is not easy to identify them individually, and that one encourages them to behave recklessly, to throw stones, to throw insults, and do other things that ordinarily they would not have otherwise done. So the fact that collective behavior makes people anonymous to the public, people do not know them, their physical identity may not be easily identified, makes them feel encouraged to participate more and more in these collective behaviors, and in that case, behave recklessly, morally, and sometimes irresponsibly. For instance, consider soccer fans who are demonstrating after their team, say, has won, or in jubilation, cheering their team because of that victory. Some go naked, some shout, some engage in verbal competition, and in the process, the behavior is not the one that ordinarily you'd expect of these individuals under normal circumstances. So that this is only possible because people believe that we are in a crowd, and because we're in a crowd, it offers them a cover so that our behavior cannot be distinguished. It's not easy to isolate individual behavior because we all find ourselves in a given group, and that group gives us the coverage. It camouflages and prevents members of the public from easily noticing us individually, and therefore apportioning certain behaviors to particular individuals. The other characteristic of collective behavior is what we call the temporariness. In other words, what we mean here is that collective behaviors, they are temporary in nature. That is, they are always like a passing cloud. For instance, if there's a riot or celebration, it dissipates or it disperses as soon as the focus of the interest which attracted individuals is removed, either through success or through failure. That this is unlike formal groups, where people who form them are united by an awareness that they are members of these groups and that they have certain aims, goals, and objectives that they need to achieve in the long run. So members of collective behavior, on the other hand, rarely share a sense of group unity. There is no unity. That's why sometimes you can call a demonstration and only a few number turn up. And even with that demonstration, they might participate, but if demonstrations takes several days, then the number will keep on reducing because it is not easy for individuals to continue participating in them. They tire up and it becomes exhaustive. So with the time, the number reduces until the demonstrations dies temporarily. However, a collective behavior can persist over the years if it transforms itself into a collective, rather into a social movement. Otherwise, as a collective behavior, it's not possible. For instance, if there are riots against bad governance in a country, and these riots persist over the years, then these riots can be transformed into a political movement, into a political party that, with the proper structures and proper leadership, that now seeks both political and legal means to address their issues and even later on participate in elections in a bid to present a candidate to oust the regime that they consider as being ineffective. In that case, therefore, the persistence of a collective behavior is only possible if it transforms itself into a social movement, as we are going to see later on. Otherwise, if it doesn't transform itself into a social movement, then it simply dies with time as members get exhausted and the issues drags without proper solution. It dies. Or sometimes when authorities come on the organizers of collective behaviors and punish them, then again it may create fear of participation in these particular activities, and the process, the collective behavior simply dissipates and dies. The last characteristic of collective behavior that we want to look at is about the unpredictability. That is, collective behavior is unpredictable, and people may react to the same or similar stimulus differently. For instance, when people go to watch a football match, some may shout and yell at the same stage of the game. Some may dance, some may pelt stones at the players, and some may hurl in filthy and abusive languages at the referees or umpires. So it is quite not easy to find a uniform set of behavior from members of a collectivity. It's not possible. And the behaviors are also unpredictable. At one point, people might laugh. The next point, they are sad. One point, they are quiet. The next point, they're screaming. One point, they're praising players. The next point, they are throwing insults at the same players. This makes their behavior unpredictable. Same to other behaviors such as riot. At one point, they are peaceful. The next time, they are throwing stones. The next time, they are cautioning each other against being violent. The next time, they are throwing insults at members of the public or authorities that they perceive to be going against their interest. So the behavior is quite unpredictable and not uniform. However, the nature of collective behavior maybe has some relationship with the broad cultural pattern of the community. For instance, rioting students in the developed world are known to indulge less in destruction of property and more in physical assaults, unlike those in developing countries where the certified students indulge more in property destruction and less on physical assault. In other words, the kind of behavior that is exhibited by collectivities mirrors so much the broader behavior that is found in the community, in the society, under which members of collectivity come from. That's why we're saying that in the developed world, for instance, students rarely destroy property, but they engage in physical fights. They fight members of the public, they fight the police and others. However, in developing countries, they focus more in destruction of property and less in physical assault. This is because that is also the general trend in the general public. So members of collectivities take cue from what they see more as being done by members of the public wherever they are dissatisfied with particular situations. Those are some of the characteristics of collective behaviors. They may not be exhaustive, so students are free to undertake additional reading just to see whether they can get more information about the characteristics of collective behavior. Any issue that's not clear, kindly note it down so that we may discuss it when we're discussing this particular issue more in class. Thank you.